1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3,
Is
2,
one of the
1.
best way to put cracks in those
1,
walls that
2,
divide us.
3.
And you might wonder,
I like
what do you
working on my
mean by
counting skills.
travel? What does travel has to do with all of this? But the truth is, whether you are traveling thousands of miles away or whether you are just leaving your home, the way you are interacting with the environment, the way you are interacting with the people around you, the way you are searching what kind of stories you want to hear and which people you want to connect with, and are you willing to hear those?
Yeah, I'm ready whenever. Kevin, do you need me to still be on? Okay.
Hi, welcome to Inner Shoes' Catalyze Courage Summit 2020. My name is Judith Martinez, and I am the CEO and founder of Inner Shoes. Hi, welcome to Inner Shoes' Catalyze Courage Summit 2020. My name is Judith Martinez.
you willing to hear those who are different than you, have opinions that are different, can make you in action a peacemaker. Travelers have more power than actual diplomats. And I know this from my own experience as a kid, where people would come to me and want to take my photo, and I felt a lot of kind of cool at the attention, but at the same time, they didn't want to hear my story. They wanted to move on. And I know how much travel has transformed me by when I was 18, traveling to West Jerusalem and hearing Israelis and their stories for the first time as a Palestinian. And that was very powerful because I realized that we are not doomed to hate each other. We are not doomed to want to kill each other, that we have the power to work together for justice, to work together for peace, and not see each other as an us versus them reality. So travel can do all of that. And I want to invite you to become part of a community of travelers that is actively working and transforming and healing our world and becoming part of this large peace movement. Thank you. Are you willing to hear those who are different than you, have opinions that are different, can make you in action a peacemaker? Travelers have more power than actual diplomats. And I know this from my own experience as a kid, where people would come to me and want to take my photo, and I felt a lot of kind of cool at the attention, but at the same time, they didn't want to hear my story. They wanted to move on. And I know how much travel has transformed me by when I was 18, traveling to West Jerusalem and hearing Israelis and their stories for the first time as a Palestinian. And that was very powerful because I realized that we are not doomed to hate each other. We are not doomed to want to kill each other, that we have the power to work together for justice, to work together for peace, and not see each other as an us versus them reality. So travel can do all of that. And I want to invite you to become part of a community of travelers that is actively working and transforming and healing our world and becoming part of this large peace movement. Thank you. Are you willing to hear those who are different than you, have opinions that are different, can make you in action a peacemaker? Travelers have more power than actual diplomats. And I know this from my own experience as a kid, where people would come to me and want to take my photo, and I felt a lot of kind of cool at the attention, but at the same time, they didn't want to hear my story. They wanted to move on. And I know how much travel has transformed me by when I was 18, traveling to West Jerusalem and hearing Israelis and their stories for the first time as a Palestinian. And that was very powerful because I realized that we are not doomed to hate each other. We are not doomed to want to kill each other, that we have the power to work together for justice, to work together for peace, and not see each other as an us versus them reality. So travel can do all of that. And I want to invite you to become part of a community of travelers that is actively working and transforming and healing our world and becoming part of this large peace movement. Thank you. Are you willing to hear those who are different than you, have that are different, can make you
Hi.
in action?
Welcome to Inner Shoes' Catalyze Courage Summit 2020. My name is Judith Martinez, and I am the CEO and founder of Inner Shoes. This year, we are celebrating Day of the Girl, the only way we know how, by bringing together courageous voices of women across generations in the movement to further gender equity.
I'm Sophie. I'm a street artist, activist, and founder of the Instagram account
Hi, welcome to Inner Shoes' Catalyze Courage Summit 2020. My name is Judith Martinez, and I am the CEO and founder of Inner Shoes. This year, we are celebrating Day of the Girl, the only way we know how, by bringing together courageous voices of women across generations in the movement to further gender equity. Inner Shoes is the modern women's community for courage. Everything we do and everything we are begins and ends with one question. What would you do if you're 1% more courageous? Inner Shoes is the catalyst for courage. Our work happens in the split-second decisions, the in-between moments, and the uncomfortable situations that are all opportunities to take action. Our work is about expanding our capacity to be courageous, not just for the big stuff, but the daily moments and choices that ultimately make up our lives and impact our communities for generations to come. Being in her shoes is being your best future self today. She is curious and daring, soft yet fierce, super and human. She is powerful, real, driven, and wants to make a difference. She is always searching and ever eager to grow. She is courageous. It's no secret that this year has given so many of us, myself included, moments of grief, sadness, loss, rage, confusion, and maybe even reason to be apathetic. But this year has also sparked so much passion, curiosity, innovation, clarity, courage, and evidence of the resilience of the human spirit. Catalyze Courage Summit is here to take these sparks and catalyze it into meaningful, actionable difference now, for ourselves, for each other, and for the world. These can be challenging and scary times for many of us, but with that fear is also a universal opportunity to be courageous. This week, we are celebrating and catalyzing that courage. Over the next 3 days, you'll be hearing from over 20 inspiring, courageous women on the front lines of catalyzing courage and furthering gender equity. Today, we will be focusing on catalyzing self, bringing out the courage that's already within you. Tomorrow, we will be building off our learnings today and honing in on catalyzing others, learning how to use our own courage to catalyze courage in others and the communities we care about. On our last day, we will be bringing all our learnings together and focus on catalyzing the world, discovering how we can bring our collective courage and passions to intersect with what the world really needs. Inner Shoes is a journey, not a destination. So whether you've been on the journey with us from the beginning or just joining the movement now, thank you for being here. No matter how you show up this week, whether it's after school, during a break from work, in your pajamas, or your most glam power suit, feeling like you're on top of the world, or maybe like the world feels like it's on top of you. However you show up this week is perfect. Come as you are welcomed here. So, on behalf of the entire Inner Shoes team, all our chapters, and the entire courageous Inner Shoes community, welcome. We can't wait to catalyze courage with you this week.
Hi, everyone. My name is Meredith. I am a Reiki master and intuitive healer. Simply put, Reiki translates to universal life force energy. To break it down further, Rei equals essence, and Ki is the energy that brings it to form. So Ki is very similar to the prana we talk about in yoga or Qi in Chinese medicine. Rei is the potential energy that sits in our heart space waiting to turn kinetic. It is your authenticity, your birthright, your desires, your destiny. And then Ki is the kinetic energy that brings your essence to form. It is the conscious decisions that we are making every single day to advocate for and align with ourselves. In other words, Reiki awakens our gifts that have always been inside and reminds us that we are the co-creators of our lives. In these next 15 minutes, I will be guiding you through some light movement, breath work, and also be sending you Reiki from afar. So if you begin feeling any sensations, that is the Reiki energy working its magic. So before we begin, I wanted to offer each of you an intention today. which is input first, output second. There's no doubt 2020 has shaken us up both collectively and individually. That's why it's important now more than ever to take care of you in order to show up as an advocate, as an active member of society, as a friend, as a colleague, as a family member. We must first give to ourselves, take care of ourselves, put our own oxygen mask on before we help our neighbors. We are no good showing up on empty. So this is how we cultivate courage, by tapping into this abundant energy that lives inside of each of us so that we can set our potential free. So before we dive into our guided meditation and Reiki portion, let's begin with some light movements to help us release and connect with our breath so we can get centered and intentional with where we are directing our energy. So feet planted on the ground. If you need to, scoot up to the top of your seat so that your feet are lying flat on the ground, and then spine is long. And then go ahead and give your right arm a shake. And then give it a left side. And then gentle pats on the body. So we're waking everything up here. And this is why movement is so important, right? Instead of having these emotions built up, we put these emotions in motion, knowing that the only way out is through. And then we're gonna do some lung purification. So you're gonna take your right hand, reach it over, and then you're gonna cup your hand like this, and then give some gentle pats to your side body. I'm hitting the tree, as you can see, or rather the tree is giving me some love. And then reach over to your left side. So this is draining our lymphatic system. Really good for us. If any of you are congested or have a cold, this really helps to break up that mucus. Okay, and then finishing off here with our movements, let's give some really slow and gentle neck rolls. Now more than ever, we have so much tension in the neck, looking at our screens so much during the day, and maybe switch to the left. We're feeling even more burnt out now than we were pre-COVID. And so you may yawn here, and if you do, that's awesome. Yawning is great. It means you are creating more space in your body. And then last movement here, you are just going to small circles around the hips. And so on the inhale, chest expands forward, and exhale, reach back. Inhale and exhale. And switch sides. On the inhale, chest expands forward. And the exhale, you push back. So good, you guys. And then slowing down our breath, finding stillness again. Spine is tall, hands resting gently on your thighs or in your lap. Eyes can close or be in a soft gaze. We're going to begin with some Ujjayi breath, which moistens the back of the throat. So mouth is closed and slight constriction so you can hear the breathiness. So we're building that ki, prana, chi here, okay? So inhale and exhale, mouth remains closed. One more like that. And exhale. This time, inhale is through the nose, and exhale, you're making an SH sound. So inhale. And exhale. Inhale. And exhale. And last breath exercise here before we get into our Reiki and guided meditation. So inhale as you did before, and then on the exhale, we're gonna hum. So inhale. And exhale. One or two more times like that. See if you can locate where that vibration exists in your body. Deep inhale, expand through all sides of the body. And exhale, hum. And one more time, you can be playful, play around with it. Maybe it has a tune. Finding your own tune. One more time, inhale. And exhale, last hum. So good, you guys. And then continuing to cultivate this energy, go ahead and rub your hands together. And then I want you to place both hands on the heart, or one hand on heart and one hand on belly. Close your eyes. With every inhalation, can you continue to send your breath in and down to the very core of your being, like a light pouring down and in, illuminating all the magnificence that you already are, reawakening the connections that already exist inside of you. And then with every exhalation, allow yourself to sink deeper, going deep inside, returning home to the self, your soul. Nowhere else to be right now but with you, for you. And if your mind wanders, simply return to your breath. Now, I want you to imagine a grounding cord as wide as your hips. If it's helpful, you can put a color to it or imagine it as a tree trunk. And then bring this grounding cord all the way to the center of the earth and listen for it to click in. Let this grounding cord act as a vacuum, sucking all the negative energy out. All that gets stored in our body, the stagnation, the fear, shame, guilt, pain, trauma, heartbreak. See if you can shoot that down your grounding cord. And as that is happening, I want you to imagine a golden liquid sun above your head. Whatever frequency you are trying to call in, attach it to that sun. Maybe you see a crystal with it. And then over your head, allow that sun to expand, getting bigger and bigger until it pops like a balloon. And allow this warm liquid light to start flowing down and into your body. Through your head, your eyelids, the throat. Taking up space where there used to be that gray muck. You now replace those spaces with this yummy, replenishing energy. Feel the muck continue to shoot down your grounding cord as the golden light pushes it out. Feel yourself immersed, enveloped in this golden liquid light. Feel its warmth and comfort as I send Reiki for you from a distance. Know this energy you just cultivated came from you, is you, belongs to you. It's always there. All we have to do is take the time to be courageous, get intentional, and go inside. You hold the lock and key. You can set yourself free. Slowly coming back into the body. Maybe some gentle sways from side to side. Maybe you tap each finger, wiggle your toes, activating the senses. And feel the support of the earth beneath you, holding you, always there for you. Notice any scent in the air. Lick your lips, swallow to taste, and then let your lips curl up into a soft smile. Coming back into the room, opening your eyes while still allowing yourself to feel at ease and receive. Input first, output second. There is a reason you are here today. There is a reason you are here on this earth during such a pivotal time in history. So be gentle with yourself. Honor how far you have come. Honor the voice inside. Continue connecting with you so that we can be the catalyst to create a brighter future, not only for ourselves, but for every living being. Thank you.
I'm Sophie. I'm a street artist, activist, and founder of the Instagram account and initiative Catcalls of NYC. So today I want to tell you a little bit about how I've used my personal experience to catalyze courage and fight for gender equality. I started Catcalls of NYC when I was 19 years old. I had an assignment in a college writing class to immerse myself in something and then document it on social media. I decided to immerse myself in catcalling. I'd faced harassment growing up in New York City since I was a teenager. I distinctly remember my first time being catcalled. I was 15 years old and on my way to a summer job at a bakery. I was excited about the job. I still remember what I was wearing, a really cute purple dress and white sandals. On my walk from the subway to the bakery, it felt like each man on the street looked at me or said something to me. Good morning, beautiful. Hey, sexy, nice legs. Even when they didn't say something, I could feel their eyes looking me up and down. I didn't know what was happening or what I should do. Should I say thank you or smile? These words sounded like they could be compliments, but I felt so extremely uncomfortable. I felt like there must be something wrong with me for their attention to be on me like this. Was my dress too short or too tightly fitted? When I got home that night, I told my parents what happened. They were sympathetic, but they didn't have any helpful advice for me. They told me, at least these are just words. Keep walking and ignore it. My dad added that if anything, I could change what I was wearing to provoke less unwanted attention. His intention was to protect me, but I was left feeling like I was the one who had to change my behavior rather than the catcallers. At this moment, I felt helpless, frustrated, and silenced. Years later, I decided to do something courageous. I started to collect my experiences of street harassment and those of friends and strangers, and I started writing them word for word on the sidewalks with colorful sidewalk chalk. I wanted every passerby to see that these were more than just words. These comments have an impact. I wanted to raise awareness and invite more dialogue about street harassment. I wanted to provide everyone facing harassment a place to share their stories free from judgment or shame. From there was hard work to be done. After starting the project in March 2016, it grew very slowly. I had support from family and friends, but the Instagram account itself only had a few hundred followers. I largely had to motivate myself to continue. I had to believe that what I was doing was important without getting much outside validation. And actually, frequently enough, I would get some pushback and critique. Almost 2 years after starting Catcalls of NYC, the Me Too movement went viral on Twitter. Suddenly, media outlets were really interested in writing about sexual harassment, and so many of them found Catcalls of NYC and wrote about it. My Instagram page grew overnight from having a few hundred followers to having 10,000 followers. I was receiving hundreds of reports of harassment. People were thanking me for the work that I was doing. And most excitingly, people from around the world were asking me if they could bring the initiative to their city. Soon, there were catcalls pages in cities around the world, in the US, Europe, South America, and Africa. It grew from one Instagram page in New York City into a global movement of people writing their stories of harassment on streets around the world. Today, there are about 150 accounts around the world. We call ourselves Chalk Back because that's what we're doing. We're chalking back against harassment in our communities. This has been an exciting and unexpected journey for me. I never would have imagined that the one courageous act of chalking on the street would actually inspire a global movement for gender equality. I never would have imagined that I would have friends and co-collaborators on 6 continents around the world. Every day, I feel really grateful to be a part of this community of courageous activists. We support each other, lift each other up, and encourage each other as we do this work. Fighting for gender equality is always a courageous act. It's hard to stand up and say, no, this isn't okay, or yes, this actually is a big deal. Your courage, whether it's sharing your story, posting on social media, or writing on the streets with chalk, will inspire someone else to be courageous too. For the past 4 years, I've seen that if we act courageously together, we can truly make meaningful change, being 1% more courageous at a time.
Hello, everyone. My name is Molly Watson, and I'm so excited to be here with you today for the Catalyze Courage Summit. I'm really thankful to be a part of this process and just grateful to be present with you all this afternoon. Today, I'm going to be the facilitator of our first panel. Basically, we're going to have a conversation around addressing gender equity and representation through the lens of understanding how we can heighten our self-catalyzing practices. So that being said, I also want to just take a second to recognize it is 2020 and everything is weird. There are a lot of things that are out of our control. I'm sure you've all experienced this over the last 10 months. more recently in the last like 8 months, it's been wild. But within that, a lot of us have had a lot of time to reflect, to come back, and to figure out how we can catalyze our best practices to put ourselves out there despite all of the things that are going around, in particular around creating more equity for gender and representation within leadership, within our professional spaces, within our democracy, et cetera. And I would say especially, for women, this is something that is something we all deal with, trying to figure out how we are the folks that are making a difference, having to figure out how we can use our power in the best way to make things okay for everyone. But we also want to make sure we are using our courage for ourselves and making sure we can spread it on to those that we are around. So I'm really excited for this conversation today, and really grateful to be joined by a lovely panel of amazing, productive, professional, and inspiring women. So today, I do just want to set some of the norms for how we are going to make this happen. Something I always ask for whenever I'm involved in something is I would love to make sure that everyone who's coming into this conversation is coming in from a place of we can read each other's intent. We may not always say the right things, or it may not always come out the right way, but I want everybody to invite their full selves into the conversation and let everybody have a little bit of grace for the things that we are discussing today. It takes courage to be able to have these hard conversations. And I just want to extend that for myself as well to our panelists and as well to you out there who are listening and who are engaging in with us as well. So that being said, starting right now, I just want to go ahead and give you my first reminder that you are allowed to ask questions. Please take a moment, find out where your chat box is on Zoom. It should be at the bottom of your screen. Make sure if you have anything you want to bring to the panelists to come on around these questions or just in general, please go ahead and type that question into the chat box. We have folks on the backside who will be bringing those questions over to us. So that being said, we are going to finish out some introductions here. I'm going to finish setting some ground rules. And then we are going to do about 35-minute conversation with the panelists. And then following that, we will have a 15-minute opportunity for those questions that are asked throughout the panel to be asked to the panelists so that they can answer them as well. So again, please remember to ask your questions. There are probably no wrong questions right now, especially as we are all sort of exploring how to make ourselves better, how to find better practices, and how to be inspired by each other. So I'm very excited to have everyone here today. And because I am the kind of person who loves to let other people introduce themselves because I like hearing about people from them, I am going to invite our panelists on and we are going to let them do their introductions. To start, I will give you a little bit more of an idea of who I am. So like I said, my name is Molly Watson. I am joining here from what is now known as Long Beach, California. It is the unceded territory of the Tongan people, and so I'm thankful to be joining here today. I am a member of a couple of organizations. I work for an organization called Courage California. We are a political organization, but we're also an education organization. We have a number of entities that we do education, democracy, electoral work through, as well as some pipelining work to make sure that we can find women with courage to run and to take up some of the seats that we would love to see some more representation in. I am also a board member of the Black Women's Democratic Club here in California, as well as an alum of Emerge California, which is a democratic training program for women like myself who think they might want to run for office or might want to be involved in electoral politics to come in and create a network and get some help so that we can support each other. So that being said, that is me. I am very excited to bring on some of our panelists, and I'm going to start with Miss Tai Adaya.
Hi, sorry, I'm having a little audio trouble, so please just bear with me. But my name is Tai Adaya. I'm currently in Brooklyn, in New York, and I'm the founder and CEO of Habit. We're a sun care brand that's really focused on telling more of the health and anti-aging story around sunscreen. My personal background is I've always been really interested in beauty and health, and really wanted to do something in which I could step into the role of an entrepreneur and also do something that felt very mission driven and purposeful. And I'm really excited to be here today.
Thank you, Ty. All right. Next, we're going to introduce Tazreen Hussein. And actually, I'm going to go back. Ty, I'm going to let you finish real quick. I forgot my fun question that was going to go in here. So I'm going to ask everybody a little icebreaker question as well. So Ty, if you could also tell us what your sign is. Do you know what your sign is? Yes.
I know all my signs. I'm a Scorpio. My birthday's coming up next month, actually.
Thank you so much, Ty. I appreciate that. All right, so on to Tazreen Hussein is going to join us. Go ahead and give us a little bit about yourself, and then please share your sign.
Sure. Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you so much to the Inner Shoes movement for having me join you all. I'm excited to be here with this incredible panel. My name is Tazreen Hussein. I am the Senior Program Manager at Vital Voices Global Partnerships. We are an organization that has been around for 20 plus years and have been focused on supporting incredible women leaders from across the globe, supporting them in their work, leading in their communities, and amplifying the work that they've been doing as our way of working towards fuller gender equality across the globe. But previous to that, I've worked in international development all of my career, and have worked specifically on women's political participation, election administration internationally, as well as women, peace, and security type programming globally. So working with military actors and UN officials and all of them to think about, how to be more gender sensitive in their work. But I'm happy to be here, and so thankful to everyone in the Inner Shoes team. Oh, my sign. My sign, I am a Pisces, but I don't really follow the zodiac, all that stuff that much. So I don't know what that means, but I will let you all make your own determination.
Thank you so much, Tazreen. I appreciate it. All right, so we are moving along. And so last but not least, we have Savannah Romero. Savannah, please come on and give us your intro and your sign.
Hi everyone, my name is Savannah Romero. I'm Eastern Shoshone and I'm calling in today from Lenapehoking, also known as New York City. I'm the manager of partnerships and programs with Illuminative. And our mission at Illuminative is to build power for Native peoples by amplifying contemporary Native voices, stories, and issues to advance justice, equity, and self-determination. My professional background is I just recently graduated with my master's in public policy from NYU. New York University. And before that, I was working as a program manager for the National Indian Education Association. And then before that, I was the lead tribal policy staffer for a member of Congress in the House of Representatives for about 3 years. And just on a more personal note, because I think it's important and could really add to the conversation, I'm also a first generation college student. As well as I grew up in the foster care system. So those are two big parts of my story. Happy to talk about it more. And my signs, I am also a Scorpio, which is really exciting. That Ty is also a Scorpio. That's my sun sign, and I'll just give you my moon and rising as well. My moon is also Scorpio, and my rising is Aquarius.
Thank you so much, Savannah. I have to say, this is always a really fun question. That's always a really fun question for me. The more time I have spent working in the organizing space, and the more I connect with people who are really doing this community-based work and really bringing themselves back into looking at how they're doing within the work, I always see this analyzing of like, what is my sign? Like, what's happening with this? Like, how should I be moving on these things? What is my moon rising? Things I never thought of or knew about before I started in the world that I'm in. And I know it, transcends different spaces, but it's always something interesting to bring into this. So I appreciate all of you sharing your personal stuff with us. So anyways, I'm really excited to move along here. We are going to jump into some questions. Our themes today are self-courage and self-advocacy. I want to remind everybody again at home, please, if you have any questions, go ahead and type it into the chat, and we will have those questions coming to us from everybody that is on the backside, making sure that the summit runs smoothly, which they're doing an awesome job of. So thanks everybody at In Her Shoes Movement. All right, so first of all, I'm gonna ask a question that I would like for everybody to answer, but I would like to go ahead and just recognize, number one, that today is Indigenous Peoples Day. And, again, things have been changing over the last couple of years. We have seen folks become more aware of things outside of themselves as well. And I'm really excited to have Savannah on today to just be able to speak a little bit more, hopefully as well, before she gets into this question about Indigenous Peoples Day. And again, the question for right now is actually going to be, how is your courage, or I'm sorry, what formative experiences provided you the courage to enter into your professional path?
Okay, I will, well, first of all, thank you, Molly, for acknowledging that it's Indigenous Peoples Day. It's certainly such a exciting day, right? We say, it's a good day to be Indigenous. And at Illuminative, we have so many exciting things that are happening today, so many partnerships and releases and collaborations. And so it's really a day to celebrate Indigenous peoples, for everyone in the country to recognize their role as a settler in this nation. And it's really exciting that, 14 states and over 130 cities across the country now recognize Indigenous Peoples Day, and that list is growing every year. But it is bittersweet because that also means that there are so many people, the vast majority of people in this country, who are not recognizing, who haven't recognized Indigenous Peoples Day and are still celebrating Columbus Day. And I think that it's a really important thing to bring attention to, because when we celebrate people and institutions that reinforce white racial superiority and colonial disposition, we're endorsing racial discrimination and ongoing settler colonial violence. Today, the effects of settler colonialism are illustrated in the detrimental statistics in Native communities. We face the highest rates of police violence, suicide, rates of alcoholism and addiction, the lowest life expectancy, highest unemployment, and the list goes on. And these statistics are a result of settler colonialism and ongoing oppression. So I say that because I think that it's important for us to consciously reject holidays and symbols that reinforce oppression, right, and discrimination. And also that we should be celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day every day, and that it shouldn't be something that we just do once a year. But again, thank you so much for calling out that it's Indigenous Peoples Day. It's definitely a day for me where I get to uplift and celebrate Indigenous joy and my family and community. And I feel like a lot of beauty and representation is brought to that on this day. Did you want me to go ahead and answer the first question as well?
Yeah, no, go ahead. So again, just so everybody remembers, the first question is, what formative experiences provided you the courage to enter into your professional path? And I mean, I think you're ready to jump in, Savannah. I'm going to give everybody about a minute or so each to answer this question.
Sure. Yeah, when I think of a formative experience, I think of a series of experiences and encounters, and really what it was people believing in me and investing in me and seeking me out, whether that was coaches or teachers or mentors or I can remember all of the first times that I saw somebody look like me do something that I felt was out of reach, right? I can remember the first time that I saw a Native woman who had just graduated from Harvard Law School, and for the first time felt like that was something that was actually tangible for me and reachable. And then she invested in me, and she took me out for a coffee, right? And I was able to see myself and somebody else, and imagine a goal, reaching a goal for myself beyond what society has told me was possible. And so it's all of those experiences and mentors in my life that have really added to my sense of courage and success.
Thank you so much, Savannah. I mean, that's a perfect way to start that question out. I knew you all would have some great things to say, so I'm excited to hear from everyone. For what it's worth, that really resonates with me. Similarly, in just looking into a field and not seeing people who look like me. My hair's tied up today, but it's usually out to here. And that makes me not look like a lot of people in my same space. And it means something to have them invest back into you when you find them. I'll also point out that I have a bunch of my favorite Black elected officials on my shirt, including folks like Holly Mitchell, Senator Holly Mitchell, always inspiring courage in paths that we maybe didn't think we could take before. So that being said, I would love to move over to Ty and have you answer this same question about what formative experiences provided you the courage to enter this professional path. We don't hear you yet. I think you have to mute your phone to talk. Unmute your phone. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
You got it, girl.
Okay, sorry for all my AV issues today. My formative experience, I'm the child of immigrants. I grew up in Texas, and just for me, my dad is an entrepreneur. He started his own business in Texas, owning convenience stores. Just for me, seeing my parents work so hard to come to the U.S. and just fight so hard to really create a life for themselves and for their kids, and just kind of seeing how hard they fought to do that really inspired me, and gave me this sense that there really is a lot of power in being able to do something independent and to really be able to shape the arc of your life. And so growing up, and even now, it's really important for me to really feel like I am doing something that allows me to have independence and also allows me to really leave an impact on the world. I would say like my dad especially was just such a role model, and just showed me that there is a path to being an entrepreneur in the US, and if you work hard, you can make it. And so seeing that really shaped how I viewed the world.
Thank you for sharing that, Ty. All right, Tazreen.
Yeah, I will say, Ty, similar to you, I'm also a child of immigrants. My family is from Bangladesh. They immigrated here in the early 70s, I would say, to 80s. And while my parents were very much instilled in values in my sisters and I about independence and being progressive, the one thing that I would say kind of kept me from seeing my own, being able to tap into my own courage is, we were always taught from a very young age is you should never speak up and speak back to your elders. You should always respect what they have to say, almost to the point where you just let them say and never push back, even if they're completely wrong. And for me, that's something that I've had to kind of work to chip away at all across, every aspect of my life. I can say it's kept me from speaking up in school. It's kept me from pushing back to professors. It's kept me from negotiating my salary, all because, you know, there's this fear of being disrespectful. There's even a term for it in Bangla called beadob. So you never want to be a beadob. But I will say, when I first started my career, all of that kind of came into a culmination where I had to choose what it is that I wanted to do in order to set my career path in the direction that I wanted it to go. So there was this one time I was maybe 2 or 3 years in my first job. I was doing some, you know, traditional project management roles, which was fine. I was learning, it was great. But there was an opportunity to actually work on gender equality programming when it comes to political process strengthening at the organization. And I wanted to go for it. And so I had to get permission from my deputy director. My boss asked for me, my other manager asked for me to see if this would be something he would be willing to be okay with. And he said no. And I never knew why. And it blew my mind because he was a self-proclaimed feminist. So at that point, I was like, okay, I need to make a decision because he has zero reason for saying no. And I know what I'm interested in, what it is that I want to do. So I have to stand up for myself. So I went to the director and I talked to him and I made sure he knew what it is that I was trying to do. And ever since then, I got that job and I've been on this career path that I've enjoyed. But it really stood out to me that what I needed to think about, and I'm still thinking about this to this day, is what are the values in me that I will not let people step on. If I'm thinking about, you know, this personal trajectory that I've been on, for me, it was learning about my own self-values and what I will and will not let people cross. So that's my story.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Tazreen. It's always interesting to me in these moments to remember that we can't do everything ourselves, but we always can stand up for ourselves. And sometimes even in those spaces where it might be really hard and we do have to garner some of that courage to be able to stand up against folks who may have some control over something that has to do with our lives or our professional lives, and being able to use that courage to take a moment to step out and to do those things. So I appreciate you sharing that. I also sort of want to lead this into another question, kind of, but I would love to know from each of you, you know, I think maybe not specifically, I guess so 2020, we're using the word equity, right? So people are catching on. It's not a new word, but it is something that is gaining a lot more attention. And so it's funny, I had this conversation with my husband this morning because he likes to do that, you know, men have to deal with this. And I'm like, brother, you don't even know the other side of this. And so I would love to know, in thinking about, you know, the acts of courage that you have taken to make sure that you are following the path that you want to follow. How do you feel like those acts of courage have helped you sort of bridge the gender equity within your own journey? Or do you think it has helped bridge that equity? Do you think people have noticed? Have you seen it make an effect? Anything you want to share around that? I would love to hear. I know, like I said before, my hair can be big sometimes. And one of the things that I'm, you know, kind of like constantly dealing with is how to be myself and still be respected in the spaces that I'm in, and not have to change myself for anybody else, whether that's about me being a woman, or in particular, me being a woman of color in spaces and trying to make sure I can set that bar correctly. So I would love to know, you know, how do you feel like these acts of courage for you all have helped bridge that gender equity within your journey? Do you feel like it's making a difference? What examples could you potentially give us? And I'm going to go ahead and start with Tazreen.
Sure thing. That's an interesting question. I feel like for me, I've valued very much my role when it comes to not just career path I choose, but what organizations I choose to be a part of and the type of work that I want to be doing and leading. And so for me, I feel like that one act of courage that I described earlier kind of set me on a path of working with other women in other countries across the globe that are also fighting for equity in their own communities, and has allowed me to kind of support them in the work that they're doing. I think personally, professionally, because I am a woman of color working in this space, and I've had the fancy titles of gender advisor, you don't see a lot of women of color with that role in my field, right? And so I feel like just the act of doing what it is that I want to do has been able to shift, some of our thinking. And you deal with the prejudices every day from all over the place, but being able to stand up and actually do what it is that you believe in, and actively just do what you love has been huge for me. But I would also and supporting the women that are doing this work all over the globe in their communities, in any way that we can, just making sure like their stories are being told, that their experiences are being shared, and that people know who these women are. I think for me is working towards equity, because I think that's where we talk a lot about the systems that are in place, and I think those are so important, but also hearing the impact that these women are having and being able to share that on a global stage for me is very impactful. And I think that also helps others that are listening to kind of understand and relate as well, so that they can also take on their acts of courage as well based on the stories that they're hearing.
Thank you, Tazreen. That's awesome. I'm going to be like you one day, by the way. It's going to happen. I'm going to go ahead and move over to Savannah. Same question.
Yeah, I identify so much with what Tazreen was saying. I think that, my moments of courage really come in those moments of standing in my power and taking up space in places where I was intentionally designed to be excluded from, right? Me and other people like me, usually women of color, right? And that courage looks like speaking out and living out my truth despite negative ramifications. It's casting away self-doubt and imposter syndrome in a room full of white men, right? Like in the halls of Congress, or in a corporate suite in Manhattan. I forgot to mention, I always forget that I was also a diversity, equity, inclusion corporate consultant in New York. And so that was an experience, right? I mean, just being in spaces. I had never, when I moved to DC to work in Congress, I'd never even been to the East Coast, right? So being 22 years old and walking the halls of Congress and being with these policymakers in a predominantly white male dominated space, right? And sometimes being the only woman in the room, not even to mention the only person of color, woman of color in the room, was incredibly intimidating. And I think we all have insecurities, right? One of my biggest insecurities is that I look very young. People often think that I'm 18 years old, or that I'm also insecure about my voice, right? And so like, how do those dynamics play when I'm walking into a room full of older white men? And how do I try and reject all of those insecurities to really step into my power and practice authenticity and speak up for what I believe in? And I think that it's in those instances where you have to make a decision between risking your security or your reputation, and in some cases your life, to stand up for what you believe in and to speak out against what you think is wrong. Those are our most courageous moments. And
I love that, Savannah. I think sometimes some of our most courageous moments can come from just being, right? Like you said, just taking up space, challenging the norms of what folks typically think things should look like. And then off to you, Ty. I would love to know what you have to say. And, in particular as well, you brought up, your dad was an entrepreneur and was a force, obviously, in your life. Would love to know, after what was it? What is it like trying to come into a similar space, especially you know, having somebody who was leading you for a moment that's a man, right? So as well, and I say this with full intent of like, my dad's one of my biggest fans, and has always pushed me to be more than what I thought I could be. And I think that, you know, men can also be amazing role models for us as well too, but I would love to hear you have to say.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, like, when I think I run a business, and when I think of equity, like the first thing that comes to mind is just like funding the business. And like my dad was my first investor. He wrote my first check into the business. And the other way that I finance my business is I raise venture capital. And the stats there are very, very bad for women, and especially women of color. And so when I am doing what I do, and especially kind of from the fundraising aspect, I have tried to be very vocal about fundraising processes, and especially with the different communities I'm part of. Brand insiders are mostly younger women who are interested in skincare and beauty. And throughout the process of fundraising, I have been very transparent in showing them kind of the background of how financing a business works, because I view that as my small way in which I can try and educate a group of women on this is kind of how it works. And I certainly started thinking when I went into raising venture capital, I didn't really see a lot of women, and I didn't see a lot of women in particular that looked like me going down that path. And so I see being very open and vocal about my process as a way in which I can show other women, and especially women of color, that it is possible. Just because, yeah, like 2% of venture capital goes to women, and it's like 0.2% that goes to women of color. So it's an industry in which that disparity is especially bad. And I really see what I do as a way, like kind of going into a business, I was like, you know, there's a possibility your business fails, but to me, in the end, the calculus is worth it, because I want to show that it is possible even just to try. That's kind of what keeps me going at the end of the day. It's like you have a business and you're fighting for your business in that world, but I'm also trying to fight for equity and trying to show that it is possible to go after what you want, even if you haven't always seen that growing up.
Very powerful, Ty. I'm glad you're having those conversations. Thank you for listing the percentages of the actual numbers as well in terms of funding, because you know, we have space to make up as women, and it's not all on us. Obviously, we also need you know, our allies to be in community with us, and we need people who can support us as individuals to learn how to support us as a community as well. Being able to see more of us within what is around them, right? Just y'all are wonderful. So you're just amazing, professional, inspiring folks. Clearly powerhouses. I'm going to go ahead and take it back, and we're going to do a roundabout because, as I said earlier, it's 2020 and things are weird, right? It's an election year. There's so many things that are going on with that right now. We are in the middle of a global pandemic still. I would like to remind people sometimes, like, it's not over, still affecting a lot of different people. And, you know, I think the question that I have here is, how is your courage practice helping you through this time in the pandemic? But I'd also really like to know how it's allowing you to help take care of others maybe during this time in the pandemic, if that helps you at all, in addition to, you know, I think all of us are awkward about asking how each other are these days, because you don't you don't know what anybody's going through, and we're all very aware of it now. So how do you feel like your courage practice is helping you through this time in the pandemic, and if at all, is it helping you help other people at the same time? And I'm going to go ahead and start with Savannah, I think.
Sure. Yeah, we are in a global pandemic, but we're also on top of that in this moment of reconciling the deeply embedded racism that's within this country. And we're in an election that is incredibly unique, and 2020 is hard, right? And I think just left and right, I feel like every day I talk to a friend or a loved one that is confiding in me with how much they're struggling mentally and just with the weight of the world. And every single day it feels like something else is getting thrown at us, right? And so I think if you're listening and you identify with that, just know that you're not alone. That everybody is really struggling right now with the layers of everything that's happening. And so I think authenticity and transparency are important tools to employ during this time to have the courage to be real and to let people know, like, hey, I'm not okay, and it's okay that I'm not okay. And checking in with loved ones and making sure that they're okay. And really doing everything you can to protect your spirit. Something that I do, I think something that's really grounds me during this time is really grounding myself in the sacrifice of my ancestors and knowing that they had gone through so much for me to be able to be here today, right? And I think that helps me put everything that we're going through together right now into perspective and understanding. It kind of feels like the world is on fire sometimes, but knowing that we have been here before, there have been harder times. And maybe, I don't know, but that there have been difficult times before, and our ancestors survived that. And if they can survive that, we can survive this, right? And we can come out of this better and stronger as individuals and as community and as a nation together. So I completely forgot the question. I'm not sure if I answered it, but I will again stop there.
No, I think you got it. So the question is, how is your courage practice helping you through this time in the pandemic? And I think you kind of hit it right on the head. I know I every day kind of wake up and feel like the world is on fire, and I like review my podcast for the morning, and I look at my calendar and I'm like, okay, what's gonna happen today, right? And then you take a moment and you sit back and you remember all of the things that have happened before you, and you remember the people who helped get you to the space that you are and how some people still need that help to come through. I know when all of this started, we were writing an email to put out to our members in my own work, and everybody had been using that quote from Martin Luther King, which is like, the riot is the language of the unheard. And I was like, we're not going to use that. This isn't a riot. That's not what is happening here. What we need to do is revisit our conversations about where we came from and remind people of that when they feel like this is the worst that it could be. I'm a daughter of an immigrant as well. My dad is from Haiti. People didn't know about Haiti until the earthquake, but what they find out about Haitians is that, like, we went through a lot and had that courage to come up and be the first to uprise against, slave trades that were trying to happen and take over an entire island. And that wasn't a riot, that was an uprising. We took over, right? So reminding people when we come back, like, we have to remember what's come before us, and put that in perspective for each other sometimes, to have the courage to kind of make it through a day. So I think you answered it great. I'm going to go ahead and move over on to Ty. Ty, I would love to know how your courage is helping you through this time in the pandemic.
Yes, yeah. I mean, there have been so many days this year that I've wanted to I wake up and I want to pull my hair out. It's just so frustrating, living through this chaos and not being able to really predict anything into the future and just feeling uncertain. I live in New York, and, at one point I was hearing sirens outside my window like daily, every 5 minutes. And then to go to like a bunch of protests, which I fully supported, but there was just a lot of like commotion constantly, and there was never, it felt for a while like didn't feel like safe, and that's hard to just like constantly feel like you're unsafe. And I've been trying to like keep in my head that this is an opportunity for all of us to reset, and to really kind of like reshape what we want the future to be. And then I would just say, like, I realized this year that I'm really bad at taking care of myself. And so for me personally, it's allowed me to really reset some of the practices that I have. And so for me tactically, I've just been like making sure I carve out more time for self-care. And like, if I need to go, in the middle, I'm working from home now. If I need to go, like sometimes I just get really stressed, and I'm like, if I need to go take a hot shower for 20 minutes out of the day to like kind of calm down, like I let myself just do that now. And so I think it's been like good, like reset in terms of perspective, and a good reset to like make sure that I'm really like prioritizing my health. And I think a lot of people are going through that. And if we're all learning how to prioritize our health and well-being, I think that ultimately will lead to a lot of good. And then just with others, so I have a team, I work with 4 girls, they're all fairly young. It's been really, really tough adjusting to having a team that is fully remote. And as their boss, I always feel weird about where's the line. Like, I want to check in on them, and I want to be there for them personally. But, it's also like I don't want to overstep my bounds. And so I've kind of gotten we've like kind of established ways to be there for each other a little bit more personally. And I think that's just been really important to like reach out and to also like know when to give some people some space and like really kind of let them process their emotions and take the time that they need to feel better.
Thanks so much, Ty. All right, and I'm gonna pass it over to you, Taz. I'm gonna give a 1-minute warning because I know we've got about 19 minutes left in the full panel. I'm gonna have about 1 or so more questions for you all, and then questions are coming in from the audience as well. So I'll bring those up to y'all. But go ahead, Taz.
Yeah,
Reed,
sure.
I'm sorry. It's like we're friends. I just made up a name for you.
No, you didn't. My friends call me Taz all the time, so you're good. It's an interesting question, I would say. I think what I've been pulling on a lot in my own like personal and professional experience is I've had to find a lot of courage in questioning a lot of mundane practices when it comes to working at organizations that say boldly and loudly, we value gender equality, women's empowerment, racial justice, or, working with marginalized communities, everyone's favorite term. But when the rubber hits the road, it's really hard to get people to actually do the work that's involved with seeing those commitments. It's involved in questioning budgets and seeing where money is being allocated. It's questioning how you're designing programs. It's questioning, who are the people that are involved to create these different programs in order to make sure you're actually doing something that's going to be beneficial for the people that you want to support. And to me, challenging that with people that are in positions of power takes a lot of courage, but it also takes a lot of patience. You have to chip away at it slowly and surely and know that it's not like these changes that we want to see, these systematic changes that we want to see isn't going to happen overnight. And I think what we're seeing in the pandemic and everything that's happened since the murder of George Floyd, this reckoning that we're seeing across industries and organizations and people, it's really important. And I have to then kind of tap into that patience that I've had before and seeing, okay, well, how can I start pushing the envelope in small conversations that I'm having with my boss, with my CEO, with my family even, and knowing that I need to put in the work to chip away at it, but also having the patience to see the small gradual changes that ultimately will help us get to that place that we want to be and the things that we want to see. And I'll give you an example. I mean, I work at an organization that I love and value, and I think we stand up for a lot of great things. But I think I was one of the first people during the first weeks of the protest, where I asked my supervisor, hey, are we going to say something in response to this? And it required us having a very hard, challenging conversation. But that then led to numerous things afterwards. And so for me, it's having the courage in those daily mundane tasks that you do every day to push the envelope a bit and question and kind of hold people to account to what they say they believe and say that they are doing. And it takes time and it takes a lot of patience.
I love that. Wonderful, wonderful answer. Glad you're pushing. I know we all are, but I'm just so glad to hear you're pushing, because everybody needs to get pushed. I'm going to jump into some questions for the audience, but very quickly before I get into that, I just want to go a little roundabout here. And I'm just curious, you know, we're deeply living in this election year. Obviously, there's so many different things going on. The pandemic is right in our face. All of these uprisings, everything else that's happening, we're really coming into this moment, right? So I'm just curious if your experiences in your communities are really uplifting in this importance of being able to vote this year. Would just love to know if you feel like your communities are giving you that energy of like, now we paying attention, or you know, do you think they're unengaged? What are you saying? So I'm gonna start with Savannah.
I think in the Native community, I think something that I say often is to be Indigenous is to be inherently political, right? Everything about our communities, everything about our livelihoods are affected by policy, right? Like we have a nation to nation sovereign relationship with the US federal government. And we're, each tribe is a sovereign entity that has its own systems of governance and its own systems of organizing and relating and practicing culture and language and everything, right? They're very dynamic and vast and diverse. And because of this unique relationship, we have a lot at stake in this election. And the issue of citizenship and what it means to be a citizen of the US and what it means to be a citizen of one's nation has a very long and complicated history. And I think that in the Native community, we see highly engaged folks. We see people who are incredibly invested in their communities and their families and in the outcomes of federal, local, state, tribal policy. But we also see great barriers to voting and to being able to even participate and access voting in our communities, right? We see voter suppression and that manifests in polling intimidation or people getting purged from voter registrations or polling locations being hours and hours away from tribal communities. Or people not having access to transportation or not receiving their ballots. And so I think that the most important thing for us to be working towards in this election is to be increasing access to being able to participate in a democratic process, right? Because if people aren't able to participate and people are inhibited from accessing being able to vote, then like we're not going to have a truly representative democracy, right? So in order for us to have more representative democracy, we need to make sure it's easier for people to vote and have access to vote and are able to engage in that process. And we see voter suppression so highly so rampant in Native communities and among Native people. And I think that has to be our first, the first thing that we tackle. And Illuminative is we have a whole Natives Vote campaign, nativesvote2020.com. We're really looking to build power to mobilize a historic Native voter turnout this election, and just make sure that everybody has access to vote and to participate in that system.
Thank you very much, Savannah. Really great information, super insightful. I hope that everybody comes out to vote this year and is able to. I'm going to go ahead and pass on to Ty and then to Taz, and we'll do like a quick little, if we can make it a little bit short, this answer. So again, just as we're living in this election year, how are you using your experiences? But what are you seeing elevating the importance of voting in your community? Are you seeing it?
Yeah. So I'm gonna talk about what we're doing, my company is doing as a company, to really mobilize our community to vote. So my company makes sunscreen, and we really talk about wearing sunscreen as a daily habit that you can build that's really healthy for you. So we have a lot of our messaging focused on habits and just like how to really like establish those healthy rituals for yourself. And so we're kind of taking a lot of what we talk about in terms of habits, and we've launched a Get in the Habit of Voting campaign. And so we're really mobilizing our community, which the community consists of a lot of influencers. And so we've mobilized them to kind of, take a little break from influencing around products and start to encourage their communities to not only register to vote, but actually kind of get the vote out when the time actually comes. And so we're doing that through fun little activations, like sending everyone in our community a vote from home kit, just kind of fun things that they can use when they're voting from home, and also just like share with their communities. And then we also had a voter registration portal on our site. And so we really tied in the idea of this healthy habit that you can, take from a product like sunscreen, but it's also like beyond that, what are the healthy habits that you can have as a citizen?
I love that. That's really awesome, Ty. And I think it takes courage to just step out from a field and, realize that we all need to be activated, period, no matter your profession. Thank you for sharing that. I'm glad you all are doing that and taking that initiative. Taz, all right.
Sure thing. I'll say this. I think I find it very encouraging now that there's a lot of mobilization of the South Asian community to not just vote, but to be more active in their civic life. I will say, coming here as immigrants, there's this history of, trying to just look down and do the work and get through the day and not, live that American dream, but because it's been so hard to see themselves reflected in our own leadership, in decision-making positions of power, whatever it may be. I don't think that there was always a lot of, inclination to do more than just go vote, which is of course important. It's very important. But I guess what I'm trying to say here is that I'm seeing a lot more interest within South Asian communities, particularly people like me that are first generation, who are having really hard conversations with their parents and their grandparents and their aunts and their uncles about why not only do they need to vote, but what else they can be doing in order to encourage others to vote, because that hasn't really ever happened within our communities. And so I'm seeing kids that I grew up with having these conversations and bringing their mom and their dad and their aunts and their uncles to phone bank and try to turn Texas blue, for example. It's been great to see, and I'm really hopeful and encouraged to see that, because it's not easy standing up to your parents when you're a South Asian kid, as I mentioned earlier. So I'll leave it at that.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that, Tazreen. Really appreciate it. So I'm going to do a couple of questions here real quick from folks that are actually in the audience. So for Tazreen, I'm going to give you about a minute or so to answer this question, what advice do you have when your superior or your managers don't feel like allies in your, and just to say too, amazing panel, want to make sure I include these questions. So what advice do you have when your superiors or managers don't feel like allies in your forward progression? It sounds like yours were, and how do I start that?
Great question. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm still figuring that out. I think everywhere I go, every organization I go to, every supervisor I have, it's different. I will say this is that I think I've had to be very open and clear about what it is that I want to see happen when it comes to my role at the organization that I'm in and how I want to start seeing myself grow. So number one, having an open and honest conversation with your supervisor. And number two, also having a group of support at the organization so that you can kind of talk about different ways of communicating or advocating for yourself. What's the best way to do that? To me, that gave me a lot of confidence when I heard how other people were approaching those conversations. So, you know, practicing, looking in the mirror, having that conversation, having a group of people that you can brainstorm and practice with, but then ultimately having that conversation. I mean, being honest about it.
Thank you so much. All right, this question is for Savannah. Savannah, this is a question from someone else. I am a teacher and I'm always mindful of how Native and Indigenous people are being spoken about and portrayed in my classroom, but I know that it is not always the case in every classroom. Do you have any advice for instructors who want to help change that narrative?
Yes, definitely. Go to our website because that's what we do. So our research tells us, I mean, you're absolutely right. It's a really great question. I'm happy you brought it up. Our research, our organization was birthed from the Reclaiming Native Truth research, which basically, which outlined that 87% found that 87% of state history standards don't mention Native American history after the 1900s. And then 27 states make not a single mention of Native American people in K through 12 education. That is ridiculous and unacceptable, right? So a lot of the work that we do is focused on empowering grassroots communities on the ground who are advocating for mandated Native education curriculum. We have a number of resources on our website. If you search Illuminative Native Education for All, we have actually a brand new, it'll be released later this week on our website, Indigenous Peoples Day digital lesson plan that is appropriate for, to be flexible for all different ages. The National Indian Education Association is also a great resource for curriculum and advocacy and providing tools for educators and advocates to further that work.
I love that. Very convenient. You said it's coming out next week?
It'll be on the website later this week. Yeah.
Oh, there we go. That question was here for it. All right, so I'm going to get ready to sort of close out this panel, and I'm going to just sort of close it out with like the last question here. I would love to just go around and have you all sort of answer this last question that came in from the audience. And so as you say goodbye, tell me a sentence that you might have told yourself when you were younger to help encourage yourself to be where you are. Or something you might tell young people, younger women that you come in contact with now when you see that they might need.
To tell myself is operate from a place of abundance instead of scarcity. And I say that because the systems in this country have pinned the oppressed against the oppressed, and historically disenfranchised communities that have been forced to live at the margins have been inducted into a mentality of scarcity, which makes us compete against each other for resources, right? When we've been forced to fight for so much and we have so little. And so resist that urge, even though it's all around you, and instead operate from a place of abundance and working together to raise us all up, because that's the only way we'll ever be collectively liberated. It's intrinsically tied together.
I love that. All right, Ty.
I think similarly too, I would tell my younger self, and I do frequently tell younger women, just don't be scared. I think I spent so much of my youth being really fearful of a negative outcome, and I would try and just figure out the way that you can get over that fear, and operate with confidence and really be assertive. But really, you don't want to look back at your life and look back and realize you are operating mostly from a place of fear.
Thank you, Ty. Tazreen.
Sure. I would tell myself that you don't have to always question yourself in every choice that you're making and every decision that you have to make. I think I spent a lot of time doing that because I was fearful of the outcomes, or I was always worried about being disrespectful. But really, it was all about having the confidence to say what it was that was on my mind, and being able to have that conversation moving forward in any situation that I was in. So I would say that stop questioning yourself as much. It's okay, you'll get through it. And if you put your foot in your mouth, that's fine too. You'll get over it and you keep going.
Thank you so much for that. I love that. I put my foot in my mouth all the time. So it's a regular reminder. But I know we all do things, but it's always great to have amazing examples, like women like yourselves. Thanks so much for the work that you all are doing and catalyzing and making sure there's, you're taking care of the work that is to be done, and you're looking out for the folks who are coming up as well. And so I appreciate you all as well. So thank you so much to In Her Shoes movement for putting this panel together today. I feel privileged to be able to be part of this. I hope everybody at home is really getting something out of this. I know I did. And I hope you all, take a moment to take a step back, appreciate yourself and your own courage. Don't forget to vote before November 3rd, please. And I'm going to send it back to the folks at In Her Shoes. Thank you so much. Molly Watson, signing out. Thanks, everyone.